interesting. Hadn't really thought about that.
It is. It's a challenge.
Yeah, you have to be really
right.
careful,
You
right?
get it
Because
right.
you
'Cause
want all
you don't want perception that there's favorites being played.
right, but also just then you're skewing your performance potentially unintentionally. So it's interesting. It is hard.
It is hard because
It's fluid.
I've had staff. Gosh, I can think of one. I hired her. She was in the Master's of Public Health program at OU, and I was just teaching there part-time, and she was his top student. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You give her, and so she came out of school, I hired her. So I'm gonna hire the top one out of the class, you know? And you give her an assignment, she'd knock it out like that, and it would be twice as good as what you expected. And you just do that over and over and over again. Well, it's hard to ignore those people. If you don't recognize their performance, they're going to leave, you know.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take very many of those, I call them super high performers, to turn an organization. You don't have to have very many to turn an organization around. You can really jump up to a level or two with, if you've got 200 employees, 3 or 4 people. It's amazing what they can do. But you want everybody included. You want to, you don't want to leave anybody out. But you do have your super high performers. I mean, they do exist, and you want to keep them if you can.
Gary, how do you think your direct reports would describe you? And then how do you think the people who have supervised you would describe?
Well, David, the recruiter, said he talked to my services. He said, man, they like you, don't they? I said, well, I hope so. But, you know, the people that supervised me would be my board chairs, you know, in the past. And then, of course, the vice provost at the university. But he was also the chair of my board of health, too, in Oklahoma City for a few years. So I actually recruited him in there because I got to ask the mayor to appoint him. And he did a fantastic job. He left that job when he became provost, but he's not the vice provost. He's the provost for health sciences. And so I think he'd describe me as forward-thinking, action-oriented, doing some things that made a significant difference in the community. Built a great department with others' help, of course. My board chair in Oklahoma City, Jerry Raskob, was, he was the board chair for 3 or 4 years, and probably 6 years before that, Dr. Cagle, Steve Cagle, he's one of my references too, so I'm sure David talked to him. He's a retired neurosurgeon, and everybody in Oklahoma City and that surrounding area knows him, very well respected. We had a great relationship. Matter of fact, I've always had a great relationship for 25 years with the board. And so I think he would say, it wasn't always easy, but you stood tall and you were tough, and you moved the agency in the direction we wanted you to move it, and you were successful at it. Folks that I think that reported to me, I hope they would say that, we had a good time, we had some fun, we built a great department working together. We accomplished some really significant things. We like being a part of that. And I think one of my references too was the deputy director. I think that, Oklahoma City there, he was a former hospital administrator. And then he was my deputy director there for 10 years. And so I think, talk to Bob, he'd say, yeah, I think we had a good 10-year run. You can't please everybody, but
No, that's impossible.
but you focus on doing your job and trying to build a great department, serving the community.
What is your experience working with a board? How have you managed that relationship, and or what would be your approach and expectations in managing that relationship?
Well, as I mentioned, I've worked for a board and with a board for 25 years, 15 years in Tulsa, 10 years in Oklahoma City. I've been, after my first year in Tulsa, the board has been happy enough with my performance that they gave me 5-year contracts. And so I had 5-year contracts in Tulsa. Then I was recruited in Oklahoma City. And after the first year there, they gave me 2 5-year contracts, and they evaluated me every year and gave me good reviews. And I look at the board, and I know every health director doesn't look at it this way. Some people just say, keep the board in the dark, don't tell them anything. And I know some health directors that do that. I don't think that's the way to do it. I never have done it that way. It's always been a partnership. It's been a collaborative effort. And what I found, Board of Health members are very, very valuable because they have I'm sure here, they have a rich array of community partnerships and relationships already existing, some of which I could never, probably if I were here 10 years, I probably couldn't reach the level of some of the relationships that you've built. So you bring all of those relationships to the board and the department. That's a tremendous strength. And I think, when we did our first campus, one of the things that we did is we wanted to build our community base and our partnership base. And so we had a nice campus, great campus, beautiful buildings. And so one of my board members to say, I know this person is the head of a philanthropy, or, for example, the fellow that owned the professional soccer team there. He said, I want you to meet him. I want you to meet him. So we invited him out to the campus and we developed a partnership. And another board member would say, I'd like for you to meet with the head of the Chamber of Commerce. And so we'd meet with the business community. And so I'd say we had literally hundreds of those meetings over the course of time. I can't think of one instance when we sat down, we described what we were doing and wanted to do in the community. And they talked about what they were doing, that we could not find common ground and work together in some way. And that's been all the way nationally to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. We did quite a bit of work with them, with the Bloomberg Philanthropy Foundation in New York, Mayor Bloomberg. We got a grant from them, and we worked on a community project with that foundation. And so, board members are a tremendous resource. We've always had a positive relationship, and we worked well together. Obviously, you as a board are my boss. I want to make you happy, and but it was always mutually rewarding, and I tried to work with the board and projects that they had a special interest in. And we worked with the board on a strategic plan. And I was always big on getting staff involvement on that strategic plan all the way. Every employee had an opportunity to have input on that plan. And it should be approved by the Board of Health. Board is critical. And so, and we did our strategic planning, and probably similar to what you did. I know you're working on the plan now. And we did it through some retreats, some board retreats, which I think maybe you've already done. You want input from the board and input from the community, and we did community meetings, and so you want that input from your partners as well. So it was just a good, positive, productive relationship. And it just made my job so much easier, because they could keep me in. Well, they could open some doors that I couldn't get in. And we had good luck with philanthropies, and when I was at one of our statewide projects, this was statewide. We wanted to look at COVID. You know, what went right, you know, what didn't go so good, how can we do this better? Next time, what kind of policy recommendations could be made? How do we move forward from this bad situation? And so we actually got about 20 of the philanthropies across the state in Oklahoma to support that project and be involved in it, along with several of the larger businesses in the state as well. So it was the stakeholders was a broad group of very influential stakeholders across the state. We came up with some good policy. I don't know how much of it's going to be implemented. I hope a lot of it, but you just never know about those things. But and there again, the board was actually my Gary Raskob, who's the provost. He was involved in that effort as well, and was one of my board members.
What is the size of the Department of Public Health in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa?
Oh, okay. It's the OCCHD.org and Tulsa City County Health Department.org. Yeah.
That'll give us our size.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's those departments, of course, they're a little larger now but they're probably around 300, both of them around 300. Budget about probably around 30 million.
Okay.
Probably.
Those are sizable departments.
Yeah, they're pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Pretty comparable.
I think compared to your project sounds so interesting, like the wellness centers. I think though compared to those projects, this public health department doesn't provide that many direct services. What's your experience been in working with the community health centers, like federally funded health centers in those? Because here, those public health services are much more on the community health level compared to the public health department.
Well, good question. Well, we worked with them closely. We work with them on grants a lot. So we linked in on grants. Matter of fact, they were involved in this adolescent health grant that I mentioned to you. And we had several grants that we worked with them on. So they did, well, you know what FQHCs do.
Mm-hmm.
They do a little bit of everything. And so we worked on a couple of other projects on actually it was called the Route 66 project. And that was working with our state HIE Health Information Exchange. And this was maybe 3-4 years ago. And so part of that was clinical. And so if we had something that was clinical, we worked with FQHCs or we worked with the OU College of Medicine. And so that was about services, but it was about linking the Medicaid population services. So they were involved in a lot of things along that way. And I didn't ever view it as a competitive situation. I viewed it as something where we just all work together. This is the way I always described it. The problems are too large to be competitive. There's too much need for folks to worry about turf because you can't meet the need. If you duplicated everything, you couldn't meet the need. But they're important in the community and a good partner. They worked on the Bloomberg grant with us as well, and several others.
I think that's it for the questions from our side, but I want to make sure we leave the last 5 minutes here. Gary, if you have questions for this group.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. And again, I mean, thank you for this opportunity. And I really do. I mean, it's exciting to me to get to know a board, get to know staff, leadership, get to know a little bit about your community here. It's an outstanding community. So thank you for this opportunity. I guess my questions are, you may not want to go into this at this point in time, but as far as the morale and things of that nature, what do you see as the couple of two or three of the big challenges over the next that you want the director to focus on the next 6 months or year? I mean, it's another way of asking, I want to be successful. What does success look like in your eyes? But what are the big, there's probably some big things you're going to say, you really need to deal with this either internally, externally, or both over the next few months. So what would,
I think staff particularly is looking for an increase in transparency and communication from the top. I think they felt that that was lost over the last few years, if it existed before then, but really looking for transparency, good communication. And this is a big staff, it's a big department, but they definitely value feeling like they have a relationship with the executive director. So finding a way to make staff feel comfortable and heard and like the executive director is trying to build some sort of relationship with staff. I think that's what we see and have found in our feedback from staff mostly. And then personally, from my board perspective, is the strategic plan. So looking at a strong interactive development of the strategic plan between us and community partners, I think. Everybody else has.
that's good. Yeah.
I would echo that. I think that it's a difficult role because there's a lot that needs to be built on the inside, but then it's largely an outward facing role. And so you need to somehow navigate representing the staff well while you build these community relationships, but you can't build the community relationships without
No,
staff and engagement.
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
Yeah, I think another thing, and we've talked about this quite a bit as a board recently, we've been through a lot of transition as a board, and we are also getting our footing. It's a unique relationship because we were appointed by the commissioners, but we are a management board.
Right.
And the history here has been, there was a legacy executive director that was in seat for so long that I think there's just sort of this model that worked for that period of time, or, wasn't sort of brought into question. And we're, I think, as the new board in this new era, kind of questioning what is our management role, strengthening kind of our understanding of that together as a board, agreeing on that, and then our relationship to the executive director and the staff and the commissioners, right? So there's a lot sort of in flight. We have, I think, really strong ideas about where we're headed, but we need to better define that relationship, I think, collectively. So I'd say that relationship with the executive director and the board is also going to be very critical in this time period, and really defining what that looks like. For instance, just as an example, it's very difficult. We have full-time jobs and it's very difficult to be a management board, but not sitting side by side, right? To understand what's really going on inside. So how do we get that transparency as a board? So, and what do we need to care about, right? What are our prioritized issues so that we can be most successful as a management board? It's a very unique role, and a lot to ask of volunteer board members.
It is, yeah, it's a big job.
As we're realizing more and more. Yeah.
It's a big job.
So it is a big job and not our full-time job. So that's kind of the balance we're trying to strike right now.
Yeah, and I think I echo all of that. And the only other thing I'd add is really thinking, and this is aligned with the idea about the strategic plan, what does the future of public health look like? And that is very different than it was 5 years ago. And particularly for this community, I think we talked about this in your prior interview, but just we've had a number of emergencies that we've responded to outside of COVID. And how does a department that still has a number of mandated things that public health has to do those things with competency on top of increasingly responding to emergencies and then addressing how community needs are changing. So it's an exciting time to be in public health, and then having a budget that is able to support that is really challenging.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, and I think, I think we have to keep an eye on why we're here. I mean, we're here to protect the community, to promote good health, and improve health in the community. And so I think we have to keep our eye on the goal of why public health is here in the first place. And that could be our main focus because that's core public health. And still do all those things in emergency preparedness and protection of health and, food protection and air quality and all the rest of it. It's a balancing act, but hopefully generating new revenue streams and balancing the revenue stream that you currently have to really fine tune it through some creative management would free up some money to do some new initiatives. I would hope that we could do some new initiatives in the community that would be impactful. I mean, I talked about community cardiovascular disease. I mean, that's something, I didn't say that, but, we did that little CBD project in those zip codes that were really in bad shape. And then we followed up 3 years later and we reduced stroke rates by 14% in that 3-year period of time. And cardio, visits to the ED for, heart attack type visits, reduced that by about 5%. Now, did we do all of that? No, we didn't do all of it, but we led a lot of it and we did some of it and we got the community around it. And in my mind, what we would want to do is to have enough resources to look at your data and look where the problems are. And I'll bet you money. I just bet you money. If you do it zip code by zip code, you may already have it. If you do zip code by zip code, it's going to stick out. It's going to be so clear where these issues are and what populations they're affecting. And then to put those community interventions and partnerships there that are going to make a significant impact on deaths and on health. To me, that's where you got to go first. I mean, you have to go where you're going to make your biggest impact. And, the data will tell you that you have to go there first, and you want to put your first dollar in those communities. And they're going to be usually your communities of color, but, I haven't seen the zip code data here, and that's where you want to put your emphasis. And that's where you want to put and why? 2 reasons. Number one, it's the right thing to do. And number 2, that's where you're going to get your big gains in health. So we're all about community health assessment, about improving health. How are you going to do that? You start there. Then you'll see your community health is going to really tick up in a positive way. Now, the other comments, and I appreciate all your comments about the board relationship, and I know you're going through a transition here, but I would hope that we would develop a relationship, and with our management team and with myself as director, I would hope that we could develop the trust and the relationship. And I know this takes a little time. That you'd say, okay, here's our strategic plan. We're comfortable with that plan. Here's the management team. Here's the executive director. We're comfortable with that. We're trusting of those relationships. And I would hope the board at some point in time would take the traditional board role. This is the board role that I've had for 25 years with boards, and it's worked out very well. And that is the board supervises and oversees the director and policy, sets policy and approves the plan, the strategic plan and the budget. And the details of the oversight of the staff falls to the executive director. Believe me, you don't want to be in that role. I can
Do
tell
not,
you.
no, do not want. We're all in agreement.
Because you're lost if you.
Yeah, no.
If you are.
No.
No.
You want to be able to trust your executive director and your leadership team and get that relationship. And it doesn't take long to do that. I mean, I've never had a problem with that. And they say, yeah. And
We agreed.
There's some areas you want to be in, some areas you don't.
Yeah.
wanna be.
Mhm.
That's
Yep,
correct.
Well, I want
I
to be
think-
respectful, yeah,
think
of the
we're over
time, so
time.
I think we want to be sure we get you over to the town hall.
Oh, yeah.
on time.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it and thank you for your time.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank
Hope we get to work together, but we'll see.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate your time
You bet.
and good luck with the staff.
Thank you.